Welcome to Diamond Kings, another edition of our weekly discussion of baseball news via the Sports Kings Media Network. Once again, we'll all be dissecting all the news and happenings in the baseball world. It's been a busy week. We have lots of stories to talk about. We have at least one subject that was submitted by one of our viewers, so we'll get to that. As always, we have an expert panel with us today of Sports Kings bloggers and general sports fans. My name is David Whitlock, and I'll be moderating the discussion. With us, we have Kelvin LaPierre from Harcourt, New York, who joins us every week. How's it going, Kelvin?
It's going good. I want to send out a quick shout out to the Penny Inn folks that lost a bunch of homes this week. So I want to let you know a thing about you.
Well said, well said. And now we'll go to Kevin L. Smith, who's joining us for the first time from Rochester, New York, another New York guy. How's it going tonight, Kevin?
Going great.
Great, glad to have you with us. Leroy McConnell III is joining us from Dallas, Texas, a fellow Texan like myself. How's it going, Leroy?
Not too well. My Rangers are just as bad as the Astros.
Oh, ouch. Why don't you twist that knife in my heart? And last but never least is Michael Prosser from Florence, South Carolina. How's it going tonight, Michael?
You always know when to save the best for last, David. Kudos to you. But hey, quick shout out right now to my boy Miguel Olivo. Dude, way to go for trying to be some sort of boxer that we're not going to name because, his lawyers might get mad at us or anything for mentioning things of that nature. But kudos for you, man, for making me give a crap about you, Miguel Olivo. You made me want to learn more about you today because you bit some dude's ear off. Thank you, Miguel Olivo.
I've heard of hockey fights, basketball fights, there's even baseball brawls, but the biting the dude's ear off, that was kind of a new one. But moving on from that subject, let's talk a little bit about what Leroy talked about a minute ago. The Texas Rangers are struggling. They've had injury problems. We hit on it last week as when we talked which teams were affected by the injuries the most, but this week they might have got their most devastating news. And in fact, today it's becoming apparent that Prince Fielder is looking towards going for Tuesday surgery on that problem neck, I think it is. So he might be out for the year. They're a big trade. They thought they got a power guy to kind of replace what they lost. So we got to start with Leroy. What do you think about the Prince Fielder injury, what this means for the team, what it means for him, what it means for the trade? Go.
Well, consider that we got Prince in free agent for Ian Kinsler and took on that $214 million contract to go with his poor performance in the first month and a half. Probably the best thing for us is for him to have that season-ending surgery. I mean, this has been an injury-plagued season for the Rangers. We've lost Matt Harrison, Perez for the year for Tommy John surgery, and it's Tommy John's birthday. Go figure. Today. We haven't had Jurickson Profar all year. He's out another 6 weeks. Our catcher Soto's out for another 6 to 8 weeks. We haven't had Derek Hollins. He's out another 6 to 8 weeks. And Tanner Shepard, he's out another month and a half. So it's been a bad year for the Rangers. And Prince is still 30 years old. He's still got about 7 more years on his contract. I mean, let's go ahead and get it fixed. Go ahead and squash this year, and then probably need to be playing for next year.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. Sometimes it's just a lost cause. I think the Rangers still have enough talent to compete. Michael, what do you think about Prince and what this means for his career and the Rangers?
Well, I mean, obviously, any time you lose a star like Prince Fielder, it's a devastating blow to whatever team he's playing for. We all remember that story in Sports Illustrated, I believe it was, where Ian Kinsler was so pissed off he said, "I hope the Rangers go 0-162." I don't think they're going to be able to do that, but they might actually come pretty close to this one. But if I'm not mistaken, I think Peyton Manning, the Indianapolis Colts, had a similar injury like this. He sat out a whole year after neck surgery. He comes back. I think he leads, Denver to a Super Bowl, so that kind of worked out for him. Obviously we all here at Sports Kings wish Prince nothing but the best in a speedy recovery. But like Leroy was saying, just to piggyback off on that a little bit, it sounds like after, once the trade deadline starts to hit, this Rangers team is going to be healthy. I mean, you got Jurickson Profar still out for another couple of months, Giovanni Soto. I mean, those are pretty big names in the Rangers organization. But if they don't get some, reliever help, some pitching, you might as well count them out now. I mean, there's no depth. And I think we've mentioned that before. There is no depth in this rotation or this bullpen, and that's a problem. I mean, yeah, it's the AL West, but still, if you're going to compete, you got to have depth, and they don't have it.
I agree. I think they had a lot of depth on those World Series teams. We had a guy like Derek Holland coming out of the bullpen late in games, but through attrition and budgetary reasons, they couldn't keep that depth. And I agree. I mentioned last week that I've been with a couple of Rangers-Astros games, and they were rolling bullpen guys out that I was like, man, they used to have really strong bullpen. And there's a couple new guys. So, Kelvin, what are your thoughts on Fielder?
Well, let's see. Fielder going into today was batting .247, 3 homers, 16 RBIs. So it's not a huge loss, but at the same time it's a huge loss because his defense on the field is going to be missed. So with that being said, the surgery, from what I read on it before the show started, is he had an injection on Saturday, felt great after the injection, but took batting practice and his left arm went weak. And the GM attributes his weakness in his left arm to his home run power being down. And Dr. James Andrews said that he recommended surgery, and Prince Fielder was getting a second opinion, which is going to happen tomorrow. But the GM said expected the surgery to happen no matter what on Tuesday. So he's out 3 to 4 months with this neck infusion disc surgery. And then you have the injuries. This is their 14th injury, by the way. So 14 injuries seems like the Yankees last year. I hate to keep bringing up the Yankees, being a Yankees fan, but this is this year's Yankees team right here. You're losing all your star power, and it's going to drive fans out of their seats, and you're not going to have the revenue that you're getting for not having you're having a lackluster team on the field. I'm not going to count them out yet, though, even though they did just lose their pitcher, Jasukik, or however you say his name, for another 8 to 12 weeks with a grade 2 shoulder strain in his throwing arm.
Definitely, they're probably not out of it yet. But what do you think, Kevin? How do you think this is going to affect the Rangers and Fielder's future, etc.?
I think it's a big blow for them, honestly, because it's the beginning of the season. A lot of star hitters usually have this funk in April and May, and they start to get going when it gets later in the summer. And I would have seen Prince just start picking up. I mean, he's gone from Miller Park to Comerica Park to the Rangers ballpark. I mean, those aren't really good places to hit a home run, easily like some other ballparks. So, I mean, it's not his power numbers that are an issue. I mean, he could obviously pick it up, but it's just a huge loss for the Rangers because he's their star power hitter. And I don't want to really say that the Kinsler Fielder trade looms larger for the Tigers, but it's kind of seeming like that, especially since neck injuries are a pretty big injury, and it's something that hopefully he can get past. Like Michael was saying, Peyton Manning sat out for a year, and hopefully he can get healthy and be productive next season.
Yeah, I think Leroy started the conversation, and everyone else kind of continued. This isn't a career derailer by any means, given his age, but it might be that you've got to get it taken care of. You'd hate to see him go through the whole season like this and then never really produce and battle through, and the Rangers really don't turn out to anything. He should have just got it fixed, get healthy for next year. So we wish him a speedy recovery. He's certainly one of the better players, funner players to watch in the game. So speedy returns for Prince Fielder.
Let's not forget that Prince Fielder, prior to Saturday, played 547 straight games in his career before this injury happened.
Right, and he was the leader, is that correct?
Yes, he was the current leader of the Ironman race.
Right.
He's the essential workhorse in baseball. He works his butt off every day on the field, at bat. He gets those at bats. He is fairly decent speed for his size.
Yeah.
And the Tigers are also paying $30 million of his salary.
Yeah.
The Tigers are still paying him, yeah.
Paying $30 million of it.
So moving on to the next subject, another big story this week was J.D. Drew had been a qualified free agent in that the Red Sox offered him a set minimum. He turned it down, and so any team that was going to sign him to be a free agent was then going to have to give up a compensatory draft pick and pay him whatever ransom he and his agent Scott Boras wanted. I think that's his agent. I'll just guess and assume. And so he finally re-signed back with the Red Sox for about what he would have got originally. I think he might have learned his lesson, but did the Red Sox overpay for him? How did that all work? Kelvin has researched the subject and give us all the ins and outs. So we'll start with Kelvin. What are your thoughts on that whole process of a compensatory draft pick and the Drew situation itself?
Well, it's not JD. It's Steven Drew, by the way.
Thank you.
Well, let's get into this draft pick a little bit. In the new CBA that was signed in 2012 that runs through 2016, any qualified player that is on the roster, minor leagues, the DL, the major league team, no matter what, if they're on the 40-man roster, they are considered a qualified player to receive the compensatory money, which goes based off the 125 highest paid players in baseball. It goes based on that average, and the average for this year was $14.1 million a year. So that's a one-year contract. He had to get 14.1, and you have 5 days after the World Series to offer that player that contract. And the Red Sox did that with Steven Drew. They offered him 14.1. He turned it down, said he thought he could get more money elsewhere. And that wasn't the only thing. It wasn't the money was the issue. He wanted a long-term contract commitment and never got it. So he turns it down, re-signs for $10.2 million for the rest of the season. He's going to be ready in 12 to 14 days, he said. He'll be ready to play a game in the majors. So next week he'll be playing for the Red Sox at shortstop. But let's go back into this and to go with I've talked about that. The supplemental draft pick part is based on if the guy turns down an offer and then gets another offer from another team. That team gives up either their first or second round pick, and it goes on the first pick. They give up their first round pick if they don't have a top 10 pick in that draft. If they have other than the top 10 pick, that team gets a first round supplemental pick in the supplementary draft, which is a reverse order of winning percentage. So it just flip-flops off the first round. So the second round would go in the order based off of the first round. And if a team has more than one pick in the supplementary draft, they draft consecutively. They don't wait and draft again. So let's say the Pittsburgh Pirates went out and picked him up to play shortstop. They had 2 picks in the supplementary draft round. They would draft, say, 63A, and then they'd have 63B. So they draft back-to-back. So that's one advantage of doing that for another team, is that they're going to pick up, that the Red Sox would have picked up that 63rd A pick instead of the 63rd B pick.
Okay. Now that we're all educated, let's go over to Leroy. You have any thoughts on compensatory picks?
I'm just tickled about the simple fact that Steven Drew turned down the $14 million offer in the first place. I mean, he batted .253 with 13 home runs and 60-some RBIs. So, I mean, what's the big deal about Steven Drew? I mean,
yeah,
he's not an elite player to me.
He wanted security. 1 year is not security.
Yeah, but hey, $14 million, that's security.
That's security for us.
It's security
for us.
For him,
I honestly think, and Red Sox, as people might know, is that they're struggling. They just lost their 7th straight today, so they're probably just looking for a desperate call from Steven Drew, hoping he'd take it and maybe give him a contract extension at the end of the year if he does deliver the productivity.
Yeah, which I agree with Leroy. I don't think he's going to because he's not that good. Michael, your final thought.
Do you guys remember the old way when you had the list of Class A free agents and list of Class B free agents, and if you signed a Class A free agent, that's when you got the first round pick? You signed a Class B free agent, that's when you got the second round pick? That's so much easier. Get rid of this new CBA bull crap that makes it sound like, for some odd reason, I don't know why, but the whole time I was sitting there listening, the first thing I'm thinking of is, okay, what's the difference between, in that case, what's the difference between a Steven Drew and an Irving Santana? or a Stephen Drew and a give me another above average to pretty dang good player. What's the difference between Stephen Drew and a Mark Burley or somebody like that? I mean, come on. There's got to be more value in the guy that played better than a guy like Stephen Drew. Stephen Drew at one point he was good. I mean, he's always going to be living in JD's shadow, but there's something. I don't want to get throw politics into this. There's something a little socialistic about the whole compensatory CBA thing, and that's a whole nother time, a whole nother tale, a whole nother round of drinks that we all might have to be in on about that. My point is this: it sucks. Get rid of it. Move on.
I think well said, and that dog agrees with you. Whoever's dog that is. Yeah.
I hate Stephen Drew just as much as I do. That's probably JD Drew in the background.
That's probably true. Hey, so last week we touched on a little bit. We want to talk a little bit more about this epidemic of defensive shifts in baseball. And it used to be, when Barry Bonds came up, everybody moved to one side of the infield. It really started back in what was called the Boudreaux shift. Lou Boudreaux, the manager of the Cleveland Indians, the Ted Williams days, used to shift on him, and Ted Williams' personality, he would just go and try to hit through it every time. But now it seems like the 6th or 8th hitting catcher, all of a sudden everybody's shifting too. So I'm curious, what everybody's thought, is this a good defense, a bad defense? Should they employ it more or less? Are teams getting burned? And this time we'll start with Kevin L. Smith. What are your thoughts on the shift?
I think there's good and bad to it. The good is that you're completely taking out a hitter's chance who doesn't have the opportunity to hit from the opposite field to get a hit or something to get the team going. But the bad is that they could hit a hitter that could hit at the opposite field, because the third baseman or the first baseman's not in their corner, so they could easily get a hit, and then it might take a little while for the right fielder or left fielder to get to that ball, so it's going to be tricky for them to make a play, so that runner might end up at second.
Yeah, I think I agree. I'm not sure whether it adds that much. There's the good and the bad, and when it happens the bad, you kind of say, oh man, that's just a dumb shit. But then every now and then they hit into it. So I'm still kind of torn. Maybe Leroy, tell me what I should think about this. What do you think that team should do?
Well, consider that Yu Darvish lost a no-hitter against David Ortiz, and we had to shift on. So that tells me that the shift doesn't work. For these batters, I don't understand the baseball IQ for the batters. Why are they still trying to pull the ball? I mean, you know damn well you get 4 or 5 defensive players on one side. Why aren't we trying to hit the ball in the other field? Why aren't we trying to bunt down third base line? Why are we trying to pull the ball? It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, but let's say Miguel Cabrera's up and they do this overshift thing. Do you suddenly want Miguel Cabrera bunting, Mr. Triple Crown?
Yeah, but Mr. Triple Crown can hit the ball all over the field.
He can hit out better than
there's no part of the field that Miguel Cabrera can't hit. Right. It's impossible for him not to hit one spot. So.
Right. Yeah, he is that gifted hitter that goes to all fields too. So he might have been. But a guy like Prince Fielder, they're obviously going to shift on. You want Prince Fielder bunting for a single with 2 outs.
Hey, you got to keep him honest, though. You have to.
I think so. I think that's a big part of it. Kelvin, pro shift, anti-shift, don't care about the shift. What do you think?
All right. Let's break this down. Let's go based on the numbers. Leroy, the shift works. I hate it, but it works. Look at Brian McCann this year. His numbers is batting .222. And Yankee Stadium, he's still trying to pull the ball just because he's got that short porch.
Because his baseball IQ is not very high.
But let's see. I want to do what I said last week. Thank you, Rizzo, from the Chicago Cubs, for in the first 3 innings bunting it twice down the third baseline and getting on base. This shift is happening too soon in a game. If it happens every inning. Every batter it goes, it's every inning. The Yankees get every batter gets the shift put on, and I watch it. I'm sitting there, I'm like, bunt the ball early in the game, get the bases loaded with that shift. You can do it. It's not hard. The Yankees have the potential to bat the ball down the third baseline. I don't care if it's Mark Teixeira, Brian McCann, Alfonso Soriano. Bunt the ball. They're all getting shifted because they all try to pull the ball every time they're at the dish. And until that happens, the defense is not going to change. When Rizzo did it, the defense changed his third at bat. The third baseman played more of a conventional side, and the shortstop was back on the shortstop side of second base. Until this starts happening, the shift is not going away because the numbers and spray charts say it works. And it's taking – David Ortiz said this last year, that the shift has taken probably 300 to 400 hits away from him in the past 6 years.
Oh,
Wow.
Keep him honest.
I'm not buying that. I will say that, I mean, anytime your star hitter comes up, from Miguel Cabrera to Hank Aaron to Roberto Clemente to Pete Rose, the idea is to get a hit and get on base. And if you get on base with a bunt, then that to me is a hit. And like you were saying, Kelvin, that'll keep them honest. Michael, I don't think we've gone to you yet. What are your thoughts?
Well, I mean, the whole time I'm sitting here thinking about this, I'm kind of reverting back to the fact that it's kind of like the NFL and the zone read. It's a bad. You know, it was cool when it first started, and like, oh, everybody's getting into it, now everybody's gonna do it. Pretty soon, defensive coordinators, i.e., managers, are gonna start figuring this out. I mean, the old guard of managerial of the managers is gone. Like, it died with Bobby Cox, Tony La Russa, Dusty Baker, guys like that. Now you got all these young managers coming in, and they're trying to employ these shifts. I didn't see a lot of this when I was watching early Braves baseball in the 90s. I mean, yeah, every time, you play the Giants, everybody's shifting against Barry Bonds. But, nowadays it's like you said, Dave, you got Taylor Teagarden comes up. Oh, we're going to shift the center, we're totally going to shift to the right because Teagarden you really need to shift against Taylor Teagarden, who I don't even think is still in the major leagues anymore. I mean, like, that's how bad it gets to a point where I get it when it's necessary, but when it's ridiculous, there's no point. So I guess I'm one of those guys that if you shift, great. If you don't shift, great. I personally don't care. And just to piggyback what Kelvin was saying, I saw it all the time in Atlanta, man. I feel your pain, especially when he was having that eye surgery. That guy can't hit.
Brian McCann's hitting abilities aside, no, I think you guys hit all the nails on it. I think it is a fad. I think just like the zone reading football, or I don't know what the equivalent is in basketball and hockey, but this will pass and they'll become some sort of happy medium. One of the Houston Astros, Bo Porter, employs it more than most, I think, statistically, and he is a new manager. I think he might even be younger than me, and which would make him younger than Leroy also. So we'll see.
Are you calling Leroy old?
Both Leroy and I are Tauruses. We're buddies that way. We're
70s babies.
That's right. And I can't let you have a Taylor Teagarden mention without mentioning that he is a Texas Longhorn.
Okay.
So next question, and this was one that we had submitted. Kelvin put some questions out to his followers and fans over the kind of stuff they want to talk about, and I think this is a great subject, and it's one we could have a whole show on, and we'll probably touch on every third or fourth show, but the whole steroid spectrum, I think we're past the steroid era, so to speak. There's still some outliers, but now we're at that Hall of Fame point where there's this backlog of Hall of Famers of guys that either tested positive or suspected, looked too big, set all kinds of records, and I know Leroy's got a lot of opinions on this. So I'm not going to go to him first. I'll let Kelvin be the first to talk it, then we'll go to Leroy. But since it was Kelvin that kind of brought the question forward, so your thoughts on steroids, records, the Hall of Fame, the whole shebang.
Shout out to Casey Ogden for sending this question to me. Let's see. I don't think that the steroid era players are going to make the Hall of Fame just because the Hall of Fame committee and the way it's voted in is based off the Hall of Fame committee and the writers. I don't see them getting in, and if they do, it's going to be with an asterisk by their name. They're going to have an asterisk in the book saying that they were convicted or suspected of taking steroids, so this could have been why they broke the record. With all the, if they don't get into the Hall of Fame, you still have all the records that are in there, like Barry Bonds' record, the Mark McGwire's, the Sammy Sosa's, the Rafael Palmeiros, all them. You still have their names in the Hall of Fame just in the record books. They should have an asterisk by it because Palmeiro stood in front of Congress, pointed his finger several times at Congress and said he never took steroids. A year later, he's taking steroids and tests positive. Mark McGwire still hasn't tested positive. We'll never know because he's no longer playing. He's now a hitting coach in the league. Sammy Sosa has just disappeared off the face of the earth. Barry Bonds has had the whole trial. Roger Clemens has strikeout records, and he's been cleared, but he was in court for 3 to 4 years fighting trying to keep his name clean, spent all his money, so now his son's out there playing for some farm team, hoping to come up to save the family name. So I believe that all this stuff needs an asterisk by it. Just like say, hey, they played in the steroid era. Don't say that unless they were convicted that then you say they took steroids. But they should have an asterisk by their name saying they played in a heavy steroid era.
All right. Counterpoint, Leroy.
Are there any asterisk names at the Hall of Fame in Cooperstown? Is there any asterisks there?
Not yet.
Okay. Why don't we just call this the steroid era, like it's been called since the beginning of it? I mean, Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens, Sammy Sosa, they all played, and Buzz Selig allowed them to play. If it was a big problem, then should have took them out of the game. They shouldn't have been playing.
That's what I'm saying. Is put the asterisk by their names. Like,
why?
Don't say that they took steroids.
We
say
already
that
know
they played in the steroid era.
What? We know that they took steroids.
We do, but our kids.
And you know what? There are a whole bunch of other
won't.
folks that did not get caught that took steroids. Look, we know that Barry Bonds hit 73 home runs, and if you want to call them legit or not, they're legit because guess what? He played in a Major League Baseball game. Every stat Major League Baseball has ever had counts, period. And it's to the point that, you know what, you can sit there and put asterisk. The asterisk right here in your head. We know that. You'll be taking your kids to Cooperstown one day, and if they put Barry Bonds in there, you tell the story. I mean, what's an asterisk say? An asterisk means what? I mean, you're discussing it now. You just went ahead. The reason why you don't think they should be in there because they did this. Look, it happened. This is Major League Baseball. There are other things that happen in Major League Baseball. It's no different than when Babe Ruth played against only white members instead of the Negro leagues. We don't have an asterisk on that. You have times when Babe Ruth had the record and Maris broke his home run record, but they don't say, well, Babe Ruth broke it in 154 games instead of 162. I mean, Maris has always been the home run man until Mark McGwire broke it. You know what? Put him in. Because guess what? We don't talk about George Brett anymore. We don't talk about Hank Aaron. We don't talk about Mike Smith. We talk about the folks that aren't in the Hall of Fame. And if I'm Pete Rose or if I'm Barry Bonds, I'll probably rather not even be in there because guess what? Every year they're talking about me. They're not talking about the ones that are in. They're talking about the ones that aren't in. And why are we talking about the ones that aren't in? Because guess what? We all know they should be in. Barry Bonds should be in the Hall of Fame. No questions asked. We know what he did, but he still was the best player in the game, like it or not. So let's don't pretend like his numbers they didn't happen. Because guess what? Every time he came up to bat, guess what? You and everybody else was sitting there watching it happen. So, in my opinion, they should be in the Hall of Fame.
I agree. I'm going to move to Kevin. And what are your thoughts? Any thoughts on this?
I am severely anti-steroids when it comes to baseball because it just ruins the game and it ruins just everything that kids stand for when they look up to the players. Like they're like thinking like this is okay for me to take steroids because my favorite player from the majors is taking steroids. Like that's not right. Because I don't believe that Barry Bonds or Mark McGwire or Sammy Sosa should be allowed in the Hall of Fame because of that. Because they took drugs to enhance their performance and they did it the wrong way. And I agree completely with the Hall of Fame committee. I understand they're old-fashioned and they're by the books and like, oh, we've been in an era where there hasn't been a steroid issue and we want to keep it that way. So leaving those guys out of the Hall of Fame is a great idea because I don't see why they should be in there. I understand their numbers and stuff like that. They have the great careers. Like, I mean, look at Barry Bonds. Before he started hitting the home runs, he was a speed demon on the bases.
He was still hitting home runs. He was still hitting 40 home runs when he got to San Francisco.
But he wasn't hitting 60 or 70 in Pittsburgh.
Okay, you know what? He hit 70 one time. He never hit more than 40. He hit 49 home runs. That was the highest he ever hit. He hit 73 home runs once. He didn't ever hit over 50 after that. He was hitting 40 every year.
That 73 was where he started pumping steroids.
You know what? If you wouldn't have hit that 73 home runs, would we be complaining? I mean, he never hit over 50 before that. And another thing, you don't hear San Francisco Giants organization complaining because if it wasn't for Barry Bonds, they probably would have been moving to St. Petersburg.
Yeah, their steroid era player put them on the map.
Made all this money, Bud Selig making all this money being a commissioner because he didn't say nothing. Baseball was more popular than it ever has been because why? Everybody was hitting the ball out of the park. And why were they doing it? Because it was enhanced. Now,
right, we're going to move to Michael.
Sorry,
last
Mike.
but never least, Michael, you're such a patient gentleman. Give us your thoughts.
Well, the whole time I'm sitting here, and we seriously could go on and on about this, and I don't know if this is kind of like the New Age Civil War here between the guys from New York and the gentleman from Texas with the South Carolinian stuck in the middle. I am literally on the fence about this whole thing because at one point in time, as soon as Jason Giambi came out and was like, I blatantly did it, I used steroids, he was like, they put him on like a high pedestal, and everybody started and the whole time I'm like, well, why are everybody crucifying Barry Bonds? This was like 2007. Why is everybody crucifying Barry Bonds when there was never anything proven? But this guy comes out and was like, yeah, I did it. Now he's like some sort of baseball god or something. I always thought that was kind of weird. But at the same time, I'm thinking, well, maybe this is some sort of conspiracy with Bud Selig. Maybe he wants this to happen. Maybe he's trying to, get more people to come to the game, blah, blah, blah. And maybe he's like, yeah, let's do this, behind everybody's back. So I am so on the fence about this because I know if you look at, let's say, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, Jimi Hendrix, arguably the greatest guitar player to ever, arguably one of the greatest guitar players to ever pick up an axe and play, was on LSD non-stop, completely just like fried out of his mind 9 times out of 10 times every time he stepped on the stage. And the guy's in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I mean, there's no asterisk there. However, that is not sports related, so I don't know. Personally, I don't know why Pete Rose isn't in the Hall of Fame. The dude bet on the guy's a gambler. So what? Michael Jordan's a gambler. Michael Jordan's going to be in the Basketball Hall of Fame.
See, that is one I agree on because I feel like Pete Rose needs to be the ban needs to be lifted, especially after Bud Selig retires. They should consider it because the new pitcher's coming in.
If anything, just put Pete in and leave it at that. I guess I don't know. I am so on the fence about this steroid issue because I can go back and forth either way. So, I mean, you know what? This is something that Bud Selig is going to have to live with for the rest of his life, knowing that, he either, unbeknownst to him or not, may have or may not have careers in danger and have ruined people's lives, all for the love of money.
Bud Selig does not go in until he does not go in, period. If those other guys don't go in, Bud Selig doesn't need to be going in. I keep hearing his name going into the Hall of Fame. No, he's part of the steroid era too. So, he allowed it to happen, so he should be penalized like everybody else.
That's a good point,
Who's all been to the Hall of Fame? Has everybody been to the Hall of Fame here?
Yeah.
No.
Yes.
You've never been? Okay.
No, I've never stepped foot in Ohio, and I don't really plan on doing it.
Ohio.
It's cool.
Yeah.
I don't want to step in Ohio either.
You won't find the Hall of Fame there.
I don't want to be in Ohio anyway.
But anyways,
go to Ohio.
It's in New York, Michael.
Yeah, I don't want to go there either. No offense,
But
guys.
anyways, you know how they all have, when you go to the Hall of Fame, they have, their own section. Like, they have the Negro League section, they have the women's section, they have the era sections. If you want to put them in the Hall of Fame, then you create a steroid era section.
That's a new idea. I hadn't
That's a
heard
fair compromise.
They got to make it family
Without
friendly.
there's no actress.
Right.
It's just steroid era section.
Needles laying around.
It's got to be 100% family friendly though. I mean,
As long as they have Rafael Palmeira's needle and Jose Canseco's book. That's all I need is Rafael Palmeira's needle, Jose Canseco's book. And the ball that bounced off of Jose Canseco's head in that '93 game against the Rangers.
That was funny.
And it he was playing for his head, and it goes over. That needs to be in the Hall of Fame. That ball needs to be in the Hall of Fame.
He was in Texas when that happened.
That was funny.
All right, I'll wrap up the steroid discussion with just a couple points. There was one guy who didn't even vote in Greg Maddux this year because he said any player that even played in the steroid area is indicted. So, one of those 8 votes that didn't go for Maddux, which I think is a crock. And I'm a Jeff Bagwell fan. And Jeff Bagwell is being like guilt by association. Like, dude looked kind of big, kind of hit too many home runs. Let's not vote him in. So those are my 2 issues with it. We don't know who did, who didn't. But at the same time, I think there's an integrity issue for the voters that they need to consider. And the one thing about Pete Rose is banned. He's not on the ballot. Those steroid guys are on the ballot and falling off quickly. So we'll probably talk about this more in future.
If Goose Gossage can't get into the Hall of Fame, I mean, something's wrong here, though. I mean, come on. How do you not let the Goose in? The Goose is the man.
On mustache alone.
Yeah, exactly.
Hey,
I mean, if Raleigh Fingers can get in on mustache alone, Goose Gossage should.
We always like to hit our shows with a non-baseball segment. We pick horse races. We pick hockey teams. Today we're going to pick very, very fast cars and their drivers. It's Memorial Day weekend, which always means the Indy 500. I'd like to hear your pick very quickly on who you think is your pick for the Indy 500 and maybe a brief sentence why. And this time we'll go right back to Michael because he's always last. This time he goes first.
Well, since Dario Franchitti decided to hang up the racing gloves, I kind of had to pick somebody new, and why not go anywhere than last year's winner, Tony Kanaan?
Yeah, definitely a good pick there. Leroy, what do you got?
I was going with Tony Kanaan also.
Wow.
I have a back-to-back winner.
Yeah, we're gonna let's all pool our money and bet. Kevin, you got an Indy 500 winner for us.
I gotta go with Tony too. He's looking good.
Somebody's not looking good. There's some cops out there somewhere. Somebody's not looking too good.
That was my streak.
By our pre-show discussion, I would guess it's Michael from the neighborhood he lives in, but that's a different thing for a different time. Kelvin, come on, come up with somebody else. I demand it.
Oh, I already had somebody else. I have 2 drivers other than Tony Kanaan. I'm going to go with the pole sitter Ed Carpenter and the 5-1 favorite Mario Andretti.
Yeah,
Never won there. It's about time he wins there.
I think
he's an Andretti. He needs to win there.
I was going to say Mario is really, really old. It might be Marco Andretti who's
maybe that's who it is.
What
am I supposed to? I can't remember
Mario
these people.
and Michael were like way back in the day, like 20 years ago.
Yeah, shout out. Kurt Busch is running both the Indianapolis 500 and the Coca-Cola 600 in the same day, so that's 1,100 miles. Shout out to you, big guy.
That's right. He's taking a private helicopter or something.
Yeah,
private page out of Tony Stewart's book.
I don't know how you guys can go against the obvious name, Will Power.
Willpower. That's why, because it's willpower.
He has willpower.
Please.
That's
a horse's name.
Dario Franchitti was married to Ashley Judd. Come on, man. How do you not go with...
By the way, you guys should always go with me, by the way, because I got, like, the last 2 rounds of the hockey, I've gotten them all right.
Yeah.
And so far, well, until Chicago just miraculously choked last night in the third period.
That was a great choke.
I'm still on fire for the finals, besides Chicago choking last night. And now they're blaming the fans for that, so it's pretty funny.
Did you pick California Chrome twice?
Yes.
Oh, imagine that.
we only picked the first time on that, but...
As soon as Jake Muzzin popped that 3rd goal, I was like, this is it. This is it. Here it comes. Here it comes.
All right, before the hockey guys take over the show, we're going to wind it up. You should turn into their show sometime. What's your guys' show called?
Around the Rink.
All right.
Filming tomorrow.
Tune into the Around the Rink show. We're the baseball show, which is our Reading Between the Seams blog as part of the Sports-Kings Radio Network. I want to thank Kelvin, Kevin, Leroy, and Michael for joining me. We had a really good discussion. Thanks for taking the time. We hope you guys enjoyed. If you like our show, be sure to share it, spread it, ask questions. On our blog, Ask Kelvin Questions. We'll get them on here. Until next time, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next week on Diamond King.